Hey all, welcome back to the next video on Odyssey's training journey. On day 7 we had a really chill day. I just refreshed him on some of the stuff he already knew, and I actually went to work on trimming his mane. If you're new here, I'm training Odyssey for the Mustang Classic English only Mustang competition, and because he's going to be an English Mustang, he needs to have an English mane. I see this as sort of a bonding thing and also part of his domestication process. The more he starts to look domestic, the more I start to treat him as a domestic horse, and the faster he becomes fully gentle. When he trusts me enough to do this, especially because it involves putting 2 hands on him, I also see it as symbolic of him letting go of his wildness. Here I'm facing some serious lefty problems. I find it really hard to use scissors as they all seem to be made for right-handed people, so cutting manes is not my forte. So to start out with, I was just cutting 1 or 2 small locks at a time and giving him some breaks in between. He had a wind knot here, so instead of bothering with detangling it, I just cut straight through it. I had him ground tied for this process, so this helped to work on approaching him without using the lead rope and getting him better about me walking up to him. I'm going to speed up some of the mane trimming process so you can kind of get an idea of what it looked like without having to watch the whole thing. Once I got the mane cut to roughly the same length and brushed through, I started using a technique that kind of thins the ends of the mane and makes it look nice and natural and not just cut in a straight line.
It's so hard to get this thick of a mane to look.
I did just a bit more cleaning up his mane and then gave him some scratches to end the day. It was a nice bonding day where we really didn't do too much. On day 8, Odyssey learned some useful life skills. I discovered that he's not super ear shy at all, which is always really nice to see. I was just scratching him near his ear and I realized he wasn't super bothered by it, so I tried touching his ear and he really didn't mind at all. I was also working on reminding myself to keep offering him big releases with lots of time in between. As my Mustangs get more and more gentle, I tend to forget that they still need the same amount of release, so I'm just reminding myself to go back and give him lots of time. Day 8 was about Odyssey learning lots of life skills. I was working on being able to hug him, lean on him, halter him, and other things that'll make him a solid domestic citizen. The way I like to work on haltering is by having a separate halter and getting him used to the halter going on and off while I still have his main halter on him, and then taking off the main halter and haltering him with that. There's a lot of ways to put a rope halter on a horse. Because Odyssey isn't ear shy and I did a lot of work with the stick and string going over his ears, I felt pretty sure that I could just put the rope over his ears and halter him that way. That's generally my preferred way to halter a horse, so I like that he liked that method. Then I come back with the lead rope off and I put the halter on that way for another bit of practice. He was really good with that, so I quickly took his halter off. I think it's super valuable to make your Mustang a domestic horse first and foremost, and a riding horse second. I like to teach my horses a lot of the life skills that they're going to need before I start to think about saddling up and riding them. I definitely don't want to be getting on a horse that I don't feel like I can catch from a field or walk behind, or just generally feel comfortable around in general. And if you think about it, if you don't feel comfortable and safe all around your horse, they're not going to feel very safe around you either, and they're not going to want you on their back. A lot of my early gentling is focused on making the horse feel like a domestic horse, which helps me to feel more comfortable around them and makes the horse trust me more. The sooner I start to act casual around my Mustangs, while of course not wanting to put myself in any danger, the sooner they relax and trust me. So while I'm still going to be vigilant, and I'm not just going to walk behind my Mustang without making sure they're not going to kick me first, I can start to relax my body language and not feel like I'm creeping around the horse. This was really nice for him and exactly what I meant in previous videos when I said that he would start to get better and better at picking up his feet when I just worked on it a couple times a day. In the first video where I picked up his feet, I got each foot to about 10%. Every day after that, just by picking up each foot once, I added 10 more percent till they were at 100. It's one of those things that I don't drill and I just get a little bit better each day until it's done. Another thing I did was work on grabbing his tail. That's another useful life skill for him.
What you think? Good boy. That was quite nice.
I then did a bit of body control, working on yielding his hips both ways. What I'm looking for is just one step forward with the inside hind leg where it steps in front of the outside hind leg. I can't express enough how insanely fluffy this horse was. I couldn't resist picking hair off him any chance I got.
Itchy. No itchy.
On the next day, I started out with some grooming and basic groundwork in his pen, and then I took him back in the round pen to refine what he learned about lunging the previous day.
Some front feet out.
He was doing a lot better with not being sticky through this spot, so I asked him to stop here. He was still taking a bit to stop after I initially asked him, so that was the next thing we were working on. So at this point, he started anticipating. What I'd done the previous day was mostly send him left, stop him, wait a second, send him right, stop him, and repeat. And so he started to think he was not supposed to stand still and just keep wandering off the opposite direction from wherever I was just lunging him. So I was working on having him stand still for longer periods of time so he stopped anticipating. I got a bit distracted talking and wasn't paying enough attention to stop him from flipping around here. If I'd been a bit quicker, I could have applied pressure sooner and stopped him from flipping around. So instead what I did is use this as a learning opportunity. I flipped the rope so it was behind his butt and applied pressure there to get him to turn around. This teaches him not to flip around while I'm lunging him. And then I just keep him going the same direction so he learns to keep heading where I pointed him. This was one of his most prompt stops, so he got a big release for that one. At this point, he was getting a lot better at sending off when I started to lunge him. He started to just feel that lead rope pressure and immediately know what to do. So I kept working some more on our stops, getting them more and more prompt. So then I started doing some work on lunging him in smaller circles. This helps create softness because every time he starts to lean on me, I can bump him off the halter. And this also helps with our stops, making them even prompter. The softer he is with that pressure on the side of his face with the halter, the better he'll stop. I don't do this too much in the beginning, so after a couple rounds both ways where he was really nice and soft, I quit. Another exercise I'll do is I'll intentionally put the rope behind his butt and ask him to soften to it. This is generally done with a horse that's standing still, but sometimes in the beginning they're too anxious about feeling the rope behind them and they start to move. I don't mind that too much. This helps me be able to stop him if he wants to bolt when I lead him out of the round pen. That's one of the checks I do before I take a horse out of the round pen in case they do get nervous in a bigger space and try to bolt.
Thought it was cool. And my first horse was a Mustang, but he was already gentle when I bought him. So I wanted to help the breed.
So when I first start doing this, because he doesn't understand what I'm asking him, this direction, I'm not just gonna pull back and sit back on the rope and put a bunch of pressure on him all at once. I'm actually putting as light of pressure as I can while running around and trying to get him to understand and answer the question instead of just have his head jerked around. And so I'm trying to bump and release and help him figure out the answer and choose for himself to respond to the pressure instead of just yanking on him. And so that's why I'm running with him. I'm trying to apply light enough pressure that he can actually start to answer the question instead of just being pulled around. At this point, even though we hadn't done a lot of lunging, he was just getting so hot under his coat, and so I spent some time trying to groom some of that fur off him before doing some more basic groundwork, getting him to yield his haunches and backing up. And the clip I'm about to show is actually the first time I asked him to back up, and it was super nice. So I was really happy with that. So I ended the session there. I watched him for a bit to make sure that he was cooling down, and he was definitely having a hard time, which is why the next day I decided to clip him, and that will be in the next video. So thank y'all for watching, and stay tuned to watch Odyssey get clipped for the first time.